The desert of Korra stretched endlessly under a pale early morning sky. The glowing towers of the ancient machine shimmered in the first light, sending ripples of color across the sand. For weeks, Elias Kane had learned to work with the machine, guiding it with careful commands and honest intentions. But today, he felt the weight of the greatest challenge yet. The dissenting alien faction had grown bolder. Rumors of their plans had reached Commander Vera and Professor Darren. Though Elias had the machine's protection, he knew the humans and aliens alike could not afford to ignore the growing threat. The machine itself seemed aware of the tension, its pulses shifting in rhythm with the unease in the camp. Elias took a deep breath and approached the central column of light. His hands hovered above its surface, feeling the vibrations like the beating of a giant heart. "It's time," he whispered. "I need to understand everything." The machine responded immediately, the hall filled with light and sound, holographic images of the galaxy stretching across the chamber. Elias could see countless planets, stars, and civilizations, some thriving, others collapsing. He saw great machines like the one he had awakened, shaping worlds with precision and care. Then the images changed. Conflicts flared across galaxies. Wars between civilizations, planets destroyed by greed and ambition, leaders seeking control over power too great for them. Elias's chest tightened as he realized the consequences of misusing the machine. The First Age builders had left a message, clear in the visions. This power is not to dominate. It is to guide, to heal, to protect. Vera and Darren entered the chamber quietly, standing behind Elias. "What do you see?" Vera asked, her golden eyes wide with awe. "Everything," Elias replied. "The machine, it can create, it can restore worlds, but it can also destroy. The builders left warnings, tests. It wants someone who can balance reason and empathy, strength and restraint." Darren's antennae twitched. "Then you are exactly what it needs. But the others, the dissenting faction grows restless. They may try to force control." Elias nodded. He had anticipated this. He turned his attention back to the machine. "I need guidance. Show me the right path." The light intensified and the machine responded with a pulse that resonated through his mind. He felt the presence not as an object but as a conscious, patient force. The visions became clearer. Worlds reborn, civilizations flourishing in harmony, and humans and aliens working together to solve problems, overcome challenges, and protect life across the galaxy. He understood. This was not about domination or personal power. It was about stewardship. Humanity and his own voice was the key to balance. Later that day, the dissenting faction made their move. Armed soldiers and engineers advanced on the chamber, determined to seize control of the machine. Their weapons were powerful, designed to pierce metal and energy shields alike. Elias stood in the center, hands raised above the glowing column. The machine responded immediately, sealing doors and forming protective barriers around him. The intruders tried to force their way in, but the machine's strength was immense and its will was aligned with the human it had chosen. Elias did not panic. Instead, he spoke calmly. "Step back. I do not wish to harm you. You cannot command this machine. Only I can." The faction hesitated, shocked by the machine's response. Sparks of energy crackled along the barriers, warning them to retreat. It was clear. Brute force would not succeed. Only cooperation, balance, and understanding could guide the machine safely. One of the alien leaders shouted, "You have no right. We are stronger, smarter, and more experienced than you. Why should a human have this control?" Elias met his gaze steadily. "Because this machine does not obey strength. It obeys balance, empathy, and reason, traits your species may lack. I am not perfect, but I am human, and that is what it recognizes." The leader hesitated, realizing the truth in his words. For the first time, fear replaced anger in the faction's eyes. Elias turned to the machine. "I have learned from you. I have seen your memory, your warnings, your guidance. I am ready to act, but I will not act alone." The chamber pulsed with light and a soft hum filled the air. Elias understood. The machine was asking him to make the ultimate decision. To activate its full potential, he could reshape dead worlds, bring life to barren planets, and restore systems long lost to time. But such power came with responsibility, risk, and judgment. He closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw humans, aliens, and even species he did not know. They were all capable of great kindness and terrible mistakes. He realized that this power must not rest in one hand alone. "I command you," he whispered, "to listen not just to me, but to all humans. Let no single person control you completely. Guide us, teach us, and help us make wise choices." The machine pulsed brightly, the entire hall shaking with energy. Towers and panels rearranged themselves, forming a network of light and pathways that extended beyond the chamber, into the deserts of Chorus and further across the planet. Its voice, silent yet clear in his mind, seemed to approve. The dissenting faction stepped back, awed and uncertain. They realized that the power they sought was not for domination. The machine would respond to humanity collectively, not to their ambition or greed. Elias felt a wave of relief and awe. The weight of responsibility was still heavy, but he understood his role: to guide, not to dominate; to protect, not to conquer. In the days that followed, the machine began its work. Barren lands of Chorus slowly transformed. Rivers of water appeared where deserts once stretched endlessly. Forests began to grow and small settlements of life emerged. Creatures long extinct or never seen thrived in new ecosystems. The aliens watched in amazement. Some could not believe what they saw, but even the most skeptical had to acknowledge the truth. The machine had awakened not just because of advanced technology, but because of a human's voice, judgment, and empathy. Vera approached Elias as he observed the changes. "You have done what none of us could. You have guided the machine wisely." Elias shook his head. "I did not do this alone. The machine taught me, tested me, and I learned. But it also chose humans for a reason. We are not perfect, but perhaps our balance of logic and empathy makes us capable of choices others cannot make." Darin nodded, his antennae trembling with emotion. "It is true. Humanity's unpredictability, courage, and creativity, that is what the builders sought. And that is why the machine obeyed you." Months passed. The planet of Chorus flourished under the careful guidance of the machine. Humans, aliens, and new species worked together to maintain the balance. Elias continued to speak to the machine, learning more each day. It was no longer a tool but a partner, responding to intention, thought, and care. The galaxy beyond Chorus remained aware of the awakened machine. Messages and signals spread quickly, but none could command it. Only humans could. That fact became known as both a warning and a hope. Humans, despite their flaws, carried the spark the universe had long sought. Elias often stood among the glowing towers, reflecting on the journey. He remembered the fear, the doubt, the challenges, and the trials. He realized that his greatest victory was not controlling the machine, but understanding its purpose and acting wisely. In the distance, the dissenting faction no longer threatened him. They had seen the power of collaboration, the consequences of greed, and the impossibility of forcing control. Some even joined the efforts, humbled by the wisdom of a human guiding an ancient machine. Elias whispered to the machine, almost as a personal thought, "We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We are not the smartest. But perhaps we are the most human, and that is enough." The machine pulsed in agreement, its towers glowing brighter than ever before. The deserts of Chorus transformed into thriving ecosystems. New stars and distant systems flickered with light that had long been dormant, and humanity, guided by judgment, empathy, and creativity, stepped forward into a new era, ready to shape the universe with responsibility and hope. The First Age builders had vanished, leaving only their creation behind. But through a human voice, their legacy continued, not through domination, but through stewardship, wisdom, and balance. And in that moment, Elias Kane understood that humans were capable of greatness beyond measure, not because of strength or intellect, but because of the courage, empathy, and creativity that lay in the heart of every human being. The ancient machine would no longer remain silent. It would listen, guide, and act, but only when humans spoke with intention, care, and responsibility. Elias smiled. The adventure had begun, but the future was theirs to shape, and the galaxy would never be the same. The planet Velos Prime had always been a mystery. Its surface was a land of sharp mountains, endless crystal deserts, and caverns that stretched for miles under the ground. Few dared to live there, for the storms that rolled across its skies were violent and its nights were longer than most species could endure. Yet the scholars of the galaxy often said that Velos Prime held secrets far older than any civilization. It was a world whispered about in ancient star maps, a place marked only with the symbol of a question. For centuries, explorers came and went. Most left empty-handed, their scans showing nothing but rock and crystal. But then one day, the Valon Archaeological Guild announced something extraordinary. Deep within the crystal caverns, their teams had uncovered an object larger than any ship, made of metal that had not rusted even after countless ages. It hummed with a faint pulse as though it were alive. News spread across the galaxy like fire. Every empire, every scholar, every warlord wanted to know what this thing was. They called it the Ancient Machine, though no one could say for certain what it was meant to do. Some believed it was a weapon, forged by a race so old that even the stars had forgotten them. Others claimed it was a library, a vault of knowledge that could answer the mysteries of creation. The cavern where the machine rested soon became the busiest place in the sector. Dozens of species arrived, their ships hovering in orbit while their leaders sent representatives below. The cavern itself was massive, glowing with the light of crystals that reflected every movement. At the center of it all stood the machine, a towering construct of dark silver, its surface covered in strange carvings and markings that glowed faintly like the embers of a dying fire. For the first time, the galaxy seemed united, not in peace but in desire. All wanted to claim the machine as their own. The Zalthex Empire, known for their hunger for conquest, brought engineers armed with scanners and cutting tools. They declared that the machine would become the heart of their fleet. The Krell Dominion, proud and stubborn, argued that it was found on a planet within their claimed space, so it was theirs by right. The Tayari scholars, seekers of knowledge, begged for time to study it in peace, believing it to be a sacred relic. Yet no matter what anyone did, the machine remained silent. The Zalthex engineers hammered, drilled, and burned at its surface, but their tools snapped and melted as though the metal was harder than the core of a star. The Krell scientists tried feeding it power from their reactors, pouring in energy that could light a city for a century, but the machine absorbed it without reaction. The Tayari scholars sang their ancient chants, hoping the machine would respond to harmony, but it gave them nothing but silence. The galaxy grew restless. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. More and more factions arrived, each claiming they had the solution. They tried every method known to science and beyond: languages, codes, psychic messages, even attempts to rebuild parts of its surface. But the machine stood unmoved, like a mountain that did not care who knelt before it. Soon, what began as a race to unlock a treasure turned into conflict. The cavern became a fortress. Soldiers guarded the paths. Skirmishes broke out between species that once claimed to be allies. More than once, the machine became stained with the smoke of war, though not a single blast left a mark upon its perfect surface. Despite the battles, the machine pulsed faintly. The glow on its surface never faded, as if it were breathing slowly, waiting for something, or someone. Among the scholars, rumors spread. Some whispered that the machine was not broken at all but was watching. Others said it was listening, waiting for a voice it recognized. A few claimed it was alive, a guardian of a forgotten age, silent only because it did not trust the galaxy's rulers. Still, the leaders laughed at these ideas. To them, the machine was an object to control, nothing more. Yet none of their commands reached it. One cold cycle, a storm raged outside the cavern, shaking the very ground. Inside, a gathering of alien leaders stood before the machine, each demanding their claim. The Zalthex warlord struck the surface with his blade, shouting, "Obey us or be broken." The Krell chancellor raised her staff and commanded, "Yield your secrets to the Dominion." The Tayari scholar whispered softly, "Open your heart to knowledge." But the machine gave no answer, and so the machine became both a prize and a curse. Empires sent fleets to guard it. Scholars filled endless books with theories, and warlords wasted armies trying to crack its secret. Still, it would not move. Still, it would not answer. To most, the machine was a puzzle that mocked them. But to a few, the ones who watched quietly from the shadows, it was something else. It was a test, and unknown to them all far across the galaxy, a species thought too young, too small, too fragile was on its way. Humanity, barely 100 years into the stars, had heard whispers of the ancient machine. They did not yet know how their voice, simple and human, would stir a silence that had lasted for ages. The cavern waited. The machine waited. The galaxy, though it did not know it yet, was waiting too. The cavern of the ancient machine had become the most important place in the galaxy. What began as a site of discovery soon turned into a battlefield of politics, pride, and ambition. Every empire wanted the machine, yet none could awaken it. And as the years passed, frustration turned to anger, and anger to open conflict. The Zalthex Empire was the first to declare the machine their property. Their warlord, clad in armor of obsidian metal, stood before his fleet and roared that the machine would become the heart of a new age of conquest. With its power, he proclaimed, we will rule from the center of the galaxy to its edge. No force will stand against us. His soldiers cheered, and their banners hung heavy in the cavern. But the Krell Dominion would not accept this. The Krell were a proud reptilian species with scales that glistened like steel. Their chancellor claimed the machine lay within their borders and thus belonged to them. By right of star and soil, she declared, the machine answers to the Dominion. Her fleets encircled the skies of Velos Prime, daring any who opposed her to come closer. The Tayari scholars, tall and robed in flowing garments, argued against both. They cared little for conquest or borders. To them, the machine was sacred. They pleaded for time and study, believing it was a treasure of wisdom. The ancients left this for those worthy of learning, their high scholar whispered. Not for weapons, not for war. Yet in the noise of threats and pride, their voices were drowned. At first, the Council of Races attempted to mediate. Delegates from dozens of worlds gathered in a great chamber built near the cavern. They argued, debated, and drafted agreements. But every word spoken ended in more suspicion. No one trusted another. Every empire feared that if they yielded, the machine would be stolen from them forever. So the council failed. And when it failed, war filled the void. The first clashes. The first battle came without warning. A Zalthex patrol fired upon a Krell ship that drifted too close to the cavern entrance. In seconds, the silence of Velos Prime's sky broke into fire. Missiles streaked, ships burned, and debris fell across the land. The cavern itself shook from the force, but the machine inside did not stir. It was as if it cared nothing for the chaos above. On the ground, soldiers clashed in the crystal fields. Laser fire lit up the night, turning the once still caverns into a war zone. The Zalthex tried to dig deeper into the machine's surface. The Krell tried to force them back. The Tayari scholars, horrified, attempted to protect the relic, but their voices and pleas were ignored. Despite the violence, no army could damage the machine. Blades broke upon its skin. Cannons left not a single scratch. Explosives shook the cavern, but the machine stood firm, unmoved and untouched. The battles solved nothing, but they did something worse. They poisoned the air of trust. Now, even when the fighting paused, soldiers glared at one another across the cavern floor. The machine became a prize guarded by walls of hatred. Attempts to awaken, while armies fought, scientists from every corner of the galaxy tried to solve the puzzle. The Zalthex brought massive generators. They poured rivers of energy into the machine, enough to power a fleet for decades. The glow of the machine brightened for a moment, and their warlord shouted in triumph. But then the light dimmed again, and the machine returned to its silence. The Krell used their psychic communicators, a network of minds linked into one. Thousands of Krell thinkers sat in a circle around the machine, sending thoughts, commands, and pleas. Sweat dripped from their scales as they strained their minds. But the machine gave them no answer. Their thoughts faded into nothing, like stones thrown into a bottomless ocean. The Tayari sang. Their voices echoed in harmony across the cavern. The crystals glowed in response, vibrating to their melodies. Yet though the cavern sang, the machine stayed silent. Even stranger experiments followed. One species tried blood, offering sacrifices to prove loyalty. Another brought rare metals, hoping to feed the machine. Another even tried to threaten it, standing with weapons ready. But it remained still, as if none of these things mattered. Some began to whisper again, "The machine is not broken." The machine is waiting, the rise of fear. As time passed, frustration became fear. What if the machine never answered? What if its silence was a judgment against them all? The thought spread in quiet circles, whispered between soldiers and scientists. Perhaps, some said, we are not the ones it waits for. These whispers made leaders furious. The Zalthex warlord silenced anyone who doubted. The Krell chancellor punished those who suggested weakness. Yet still the rumors grew. One night, a group of scholars recorded a strange event. As storms raged outside, the machine's glow pulsed faster for a few seconds, like a heartbeat that had quickened. No commands were given, no songs were sung, no energy poured in. It acted on its own. and just as quickly it stilled again. This small event terrified many. It proved the machine was not lifeless. It was aware, and if it was aware, then it was choosing not to answer. The wars around the cavern soon the struggle for control spread beyond Velos Prime. Fleets clashed in nearby star systems. Worlds were blockaded. Trade routes collapsed as empires poured their resources into the war for the machine. The galaxy had not seen such wide conflict in generations. Yet all of it was over something no one could command. In the cavern itself, the scene grew darker. Instead of scholars and engineers, more and more soldiers filled the space. The machine was surrounded by weapons. Guards stood ready at every crystal pillar. What once was a place of discovery became a fortress. The Tayari scholars wept. The ancients did not leave this for war, they cried. But their words were ignored. The machine glowed softly as if watching. The silent test-a-quiet idea began to take root among a few thinkers from different races. They gathered in secret, away from their leaders' eyes. They spoke of a possibility. What if the machine was not meant to be commanded by force at all? Perhaps it listens for more than power, one said. Perhaps it waits for a voice it can trust, another added. Perhaps it is a test, whispered a third. But who could pass such a test? None could agree. Pride and ambition clouded every mind. Every empire believed only they were worthy. None could imagine that the answer might lie elsewhere, outside their proud circle. And so while the galaxy tore itself apart, the machine kept its silence, the waiting ends as the wars dragged on. Fewer believed the machine would ever awaken. Some gave up, withdrawing their fleets. Others stayed only out of pride, unwilling to admit defeat. But the cavern of Velos Prime remained guarded, always watched, always filled with soldiers and scientists waiting for a miracle. They did not know that across the stars, a small group of humans had heard the stories. They were a young race, ignored by the powerful, underestimated by the old. But they carried something the machine longed for. The galaxy thought humanity too weak to matter. The machine thought differently, and so it waited still, glowing faintly until the day a human voice would speak. The wars for the ancient machine had lasted for decades. Fleets filled the skies, soldiers filled the caverns, and every day the galaxy seemed closer to breaking itself in endless conflict. Yet despite all the power, all the knowledge, all the ambition, the machine remained silent. It stood in the cavern like a monument, unmoved by threats, pleas, or commands. No one expected humans to arrive. Humans were considered newcomers in the galaxy, barely a century into interstellar travel. Most races thought them fragile, inexperienced, and unimportant. Yet a small team of human explorers had been following the stories of Velos Prime. They traveled quietly, unnoticed, observing from afar while the galaxy fought itself. Their ship, a sleek human craft named Aurora, landed on the edge of the crystal fields. The humans disembarked slowly, careful to make no noise. Unlike the other species, they carried no weapons, no war fleets, and no banners. They carried curiosity, intelligence, and courage, the tools they believed would matter most. Leading the group was Dr. Lyra Morgan, a scientist with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She had read every report of the machine, studied every theory, and noticed patterns no one else had seen. "The others are trying to control it," she said quietly to her team. "They're trying to force it to obey. But I think it is waiting for someone else." Her team nodded, unsure what she meant, but they trusted her instincts. They moved forward cautiously, their footsteps echoing across the crystal floor. Around them, alien soldiers glared, ready to attack intruders. Yet somehow no one fired. Perhaps the humans' small size and lack of threat made them invisible, or perhaps the machine itself allowed them to approach. The first encounter, as the humans drew near, the machine's faint glow seemed to respond. The carvings on its surface pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat awakening. The aliens did not notice this, too busy preparing weapons and shields. The humans, however, paused to observe. Ilara stepped forward, her eyes tracing the intricate designs that covered the machine. They were symbols and patterns unlike any known language. But she noticed something familiar, shapes that resembled the letters and sounds of ancient human scripts, preserved in ways she could barely comprehend. She whispered a word, barely audible, "Awaken." The effect was immediate. The glow of the machine flared brighter than it had in thousands of years. Crystals in the cavern reflected the light, turning the walls into a kaleidoscope of colors. A low hum vibrated through the air, a sound so deep that it seemed to shake the very bones of the planet. The alien soldiers froze. Their scanners failed. Their weapons malfunctioned. The machine had responded. Ilara's team gasped, astonished. They had not expected such a reaction. The word she had spoken was simple, but it carried meaning, a resonance that the machine recognized. Years of attempts by thousands of species had failed, yet a single human voice had awakened it. The shock of the galaxy word spread quickly among the factions surrounding the cavern. The Zalthex warlord, who had grown arrogant over decades of failure, clenched his fists in disbelief. "How can this be?" he shouted. "We poured power into it. We commanded it with our voices and minds. How can humans succeed where we failed?" The Krell Chancellor's eyes widened. "This is impossible," she muttered. Her advisors scrambled to send commands, but their signals were ignored. The machine had chosen. It would listen only to the human who spoke. Even the Tayari scholars who had long argued for understanding were stunned. "Perhaps," the High Scholar whispered, "we underestimated them. Perhaps humanity holds a quality the ancients recognized." And in the cavern the machine began to move. Not violently, not with weapons, but slowly, with purpose. Gears turned inside its massive frame. Mechanisms shifted, and the structure extended into shapes that resembled wings, thrusters, and panels, something like a colossal starship. The humans stepped back, but their awe was tempered by determination. They had come seeking answers, and now they were receiving them. The machine speaks. Without words, the machine did not speak in language. It communicated in images, sensations, and vibrations that the humans could feel. Ilara saw visions of stars long dead, of civilizations rising and falling, and of a race that had built the machine before vanishing. She understood that it had been a guardian, designed to be controlled only by a species capable of resilience, creativity, and emotional strength. The aliens watched in disbelief as the humans approached without fear, and the machine responded. Every attempt the aliens had made, power, codes, telepathy, threats, was useless. Yet humanity, with nothing but presence and voice, had awakened what no empire could command. Ilara reached out and touched a smooth surface of the machine. Energy flowed through her, not harmful but invigorating. Images of ancient maps, star routes, and forgotten technology flashed in her mind. She realized that the machine was not a weapon. It was a legacy, a tool to guide, protect, and elevate. But it would do so only for those it deemed worthy. A lesson in humility. The Zalthex warlord clenched his claws in frustration. "We are stronger. We are older. We are the rightful rulers," he bellowed. But the machine did not respond to him. The Krell Chancellor tried to impose her authority. She waved her staff and shouted commands. The machine ignored her as well. The aliens' pride, their centuries of achievement, their fleets and armies had failed them. The galaxy had thought that power meant control, that experience meant mastery. Yet the machine had chosen differently. It had chosen humanity. Even some Tayari scholars who had believed in patience and study admitted the truth quietly to themselves. Strength, knowledge, and wisdom were not always enough. Sometimes the smallest, youngest race could hold the greatest key. The first human command, Ilara's voice, soft but confident, spoke another word. "Guide." Immediately, the machine responded. Panels opened, thrusters rotated, and light streamed from its engines. The cavern vibrated as the machine prepared itself, not for destruction but for purpose. The humans realized they were not controlling it in the way the aliens had imagined. They were partners, not masters. The machine would follow a human voice, yes, but it would act with intention, using its own judgment. It was alive in a way that no tool could ever be, and it trusted humans to wield its power responsibly. The aliens, seeing this, understood they had been arrogant. All their attempts had been rooted in pride. Yet here, a species barely known in the galaxy had succeeded where the greatest empires had failed. A new path, begins. Ilara and her team stepped back as the machine extended into its full form, transforming into a structure that could travel across the stars. It hummed with energy, vibrant and alive, waiting for humanity's next command. The humans did not shout, threaten, or demand. They spoke with clarity, calmness, and respect, and the machine answered them. The galaxy watched in awe and fear. They had long believed that the oldest, most powerful races would control the future. Now they realized that it was the humans who had awakened the future. and that the machine would listen only to them. For the first time, hope flickered in the hearts of those who had lost everything to war. Perhaps the galaxy did not need to fight to survive. Perhaps with humans and the machine, there was a chance for guidance, understanding, and protection. And above all, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Sometimes strength is not shown in fleets or weapons, but in courage, insight, and the simple power of a voice that speaks with wisdom. The ancient machine hummed softly, its lights pulsating like a heartbeat. In the cavern, the humans stood in awe, realizing they were no longer just visitors, they were recognized. After centuries of silence, the machine had chosen a voice, a species, and it had made its decision clear: humanity. Dr. Alara Morgan stepped closer. Her hands raised not in command but in understanding. The machine responded to her touch, sending vibrations through the air that formed images and visions. The aliens around them recoiled at first, fearful of what they did not understand. But the humans felt the energy flow, and soon, Ilara saw the truth. The machine projected visions across the cavern, shimmering like a living story. Ancient stars formed before her eyes, and civilizations long vanished left traces of their brilliance and their failure. She saw a race that had once dominated the galaxy, creating wonders beyond imagination, only to vanish mysteriously. And at the center of their legacy was the machine, a guardian, a protector, and a guide. Alara spoke softly, interpreting what she saw. It was built as a safeguard, she said. Not for conquest, not for war. It was meant to awaken only for a species capable of resilience, creativity, and empathy. The ancients wanted a successor, not a master. The aliens gasped. For decades, they had believed strength alone, power, technology, authority, would grant them control. Yet here was proof that centuries of knowledge and fleets of warships could not match qualities they had dismissed as weak or insignificant. The legacy of the ancients. The machine revealed images of the ancient creators, tall, graceful beings with translucent skin that glowed faintly in their own light. They traveled across stars, forming alliances, building cities that touched clouds, and creating technologies that seemed impossible. And then, without warning, they vanished. But the machine survived. It had been left behind as a test. Only the worthy would awaken it. The ancients knew, Alara whispered to her team, that one day a species would rise capable of holding their knowledge without greed. They designed the machine to choose, not to obey. And it has chosen us, humans. Around her, the alien leaders tried to speak, but the machine ignored them. The Zolthex warlord bellowed, "We have strength. We are older. You cannot deny us." Yet his words fell flat. The Krell Chancellor demanded control, but the machine would not respond. Every attempt to assert dominance was futile. The truth had become undeniable. The machine recognized humanity, and only humanity could guide it. The weight of responsibility, Alara realized the enormity of what had happened. The machine was not a weapon, though it could be used as one. It was not a tool, though it could shape entire star systems. It was a legacy, a responsibility, and humanity had been entrusted with it. She gathered her team in a quiet corner of the cavern. "This is more than power," she said. "This is a responsibility. The machine will obey us, yes, but only if we guide it with wisdom. If we act recklessly, it will not help us. We must be careful, thoughtful, and just." Her team nodded, understanding that their role was unlike anything humanity had faced before. They were not conquerors. They were guardians. The alien perspective. The alien factions watched, stunned and silent. For the first time, centuries of pride and ambition were challenged. They had believed their experience, their fleets, their knowledge, and their cunning were enough. Yet none of it could awaken the machine. Some felt anger, others disbelief, and a few, rare scholars, felt awe. Among the Tayari, the High Scholar whispered, "Perhaps we have been wrong to judge the value of a young race. Perhaps wisdom can appear in unexpected forms." Even the warlike Zolthex were forced to acknowledge a truth they could not deny. Strength alone does not guarantee worthiness. The galaxy had been humbled by the ancient machine, and in its silence, it had spoken a lesson far greater than any treaty. Weapon or fleet, sometimes the smallest and youngest can carry the greatest responsibility. Testing humanity's intentions, the machine did not act recklessly. It did not automatically submit to human commands. Instead, it presented challenges, puzzles of energy, navigation, and ethical choices. Lyra and her team quickly realized that the machine was testing them, learning if humanity could wield its power responsibly. One test involved guiding energy through a network of channels that could either stabilize a star or risk destabilizing it. Another test required communication with a long-dormant satellite system that once monitored the galaxy. Each time, humans succeeded by thinking creatively, adapting quickly, and choosing the path that caused the least harm. The aliens watched in awe. None could understand why humans succeeded, though they tried to analyze it. They could not see what the machine saw: humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and empathy. A new understanding of Lyra stood before the machine as it projected yet another vision: a galaxy in chaos, torn by greed and pride. Then another image: the same galaxy, guided by a species that acted with care and understanding. The difference was clear. One path led to ruin, the other to survival and harmony. The humans understood that the machine did not grant power for conquest. It offered guidance for those who could prove their wisdom. And the galaxy, watching silently, began to understand the lesson too. The Zolthecs, angry but respectful, whispered among themselves. The Krell, frustrated yet curious, debated the meaning of worthiness. And the Teari scholars quietly bowed in acknowledgement. The machine had revealed the truth not just to humanity, but to the entire galaxy. True mastery comes from character, not weapons. A choice for humanity. With the machine now awakened, Lyra realized that humanity faced a choice. They could use it for domination, as the aliens had once hoped, or they could guide the galaxy toward peace and understanding. She looked at her team. "We cannot be rulers," she said firmly. "The machine is a partner, not a weapon of oppression. We must lead with wisdom, not with fear." Her team nodded. Together they began planning. The machine, sensing their intentions, hummed with a resonance that seemed almost approving. It would assist them, teach them, and move as they guided it, but always under their careful judgment. The Galaxy Watch's news of the human awakening of the ancient machine spread quickly. The galaxy, which had long been fractured by greed and conflict, paused to watch. Stories of human resilience and insight traveled faster than fleets. Some species came to learn from humanity. Others approached with caution, and a few plotted in secret, hoping to challenge the machine's new guardians. Yet one thing was clear: the galaxy would never again underestimate humanity. They had proven that wisdom, courage, and compassion were more powerful than fleets, weapons, or pride. And within the cavern, the ancient machine pulsed with energy, ready to travel, to teach, and to guide. It had chosen its successor, and it had chosen humanity. A new era begins. Lyra understood the significance of this moment. Humanity had been tested, chosen, and trusted. The machine's awakening was not just a victory, it was the start of a new era for the galaxy. The aliens, once arrogant, now observed humans with a mixture of respect and apprehension. They realized that the young race they had dismissed for so long now held the key to the galaxy's future. The ancient machine, silent yet alive, waited for the next command. But for the first time, the galaxy sensed hope. Humanity had been given a responsibility unlike any other, a chance to guide the stars with wisdom, creativity, and care. And in the silence of Velos Prime, where centuries of ambition had failed, the machine pulsed once more, confirming what everyone could now see. The galaxy's future rested in human hands.